Hey everyone, it's Josh, J Vintage Honda Minis. We're back on this bike. This is the second video in the series for the engine swap. We are putting a import Lifan based engine, 125cc with a hand clutch on it. We're pulling this Honda stock engine because I believe it's the shift dogs that are worn, so we're getting very bad pop out in a couple gears. So we're gonna just go ahead and swap it out. That's what the owners elected to do. So we're gonna go ahead and get this engine pulled. We'll start adding all the components that I show you guys in the first video, which I'll give you a link to if you missed that, of all the engine and components that I purchased to make the swap go smoothly. So we'll get the engine pulled, we'll start putting the sub harness in, we'll start changing out all the incidental items to make this swap work. Did not make it into the first video, but you're going to need it. A voltage regulator. It does not come with the engine kit. I didn't realize that until I looked a little closer after the fact. So you need to get a half-wave voltage regulator rectifier, and I'll show you a quick screenshot. I got it on Amazon and it was less than $10 to have it shipped. So make sure we get this ordered to help with the installation of this import 12-volt engine. The other tip I'll give you guys, you know, if you have a motorcycle lift, you're fine with, you know, holding the bike in place and dropping the engine out. But if you don't, I don't have a lift, I don't use one, so I have just some D-rings with a little bit larger plate mounted to my stud or trusses in the ceiling here. Pretty effective way to just hold the bike up, because when you pull the engine, the kickstand foot pegs are mounted to the engine, so then you'll no longer have any support for the bike while the engine's out. So either you can use something like I set up with some straps to the ceiling, lean it up against something securely, motorcycle lift, or sometimes you can just use like a stool and put the bike up on that and then lift the frame up off the engine, leaving the engine on the stool when you dismount it. But your choice. So first thing I'm going to do, I got some gas in my tank, so first thing we're going to want to do is just drain it, get a container, and dispose of it properly. When you pull the engine, you got your fuel lines and the petcock's built into the carb, so there's not really any way to stop the deluge of fuel. So go ahead and get that drained first, and then we can start unbolting everything and pulling it out. So while that's draining, start getting your parts off. We need to get the chain guard, the side cover off, so we can get to the sprocket, because we're going to be taking the engine off and you got to get the chain removed. That's JIS bit number 3 for these screws. Those are Japanese industrial standard screw heads. Don't use a Phillips head. You tend to strip them, so use a JIS number 3. These are 10mm bolts, hex bolts. So we'll take the bolts off there. Start getting access to everything. Get yourself a little baggie if you want to keep all your hardware in order. And then the chain area, when you get your chain on, it's best to have your chain on here on the sprocket teeth so that you can back these screws out. Otherwise it tends to spin on you if nothing's holding it. Or if you already have it off, you can put like a punch or maybe a screwdriver in here and secure it. Just make sure you don't put too much torque to break the casting over here. I'm not going to be reusing the chain. You guys can choose to, if it's still a good chain, because what you're going to want to do is put smaller sprockets to take advantage of the new torque and horsepower of the bigger engine. So effectively you'll be able to cut your chain a little shorter and reuse it if you want. But I'm going to put all new sprockets and chain on, and that's my advice, is when you put new sprockets on, put a new chain so it all wears together. You don't want really an old chain on new sprockets. Alright, so let's keep going at this on this left side of the bike, as if you're sitting on it, the left side. Get our carb cap pulled off. Let's slide out of there. And we're going to take this 10mm on the air box. You have a 14mm nut here that holds the lower part of the air box. It's part of the engine mount. So let's go ahead and get those off. We can take this lower mount over here, nut off. Alright, so you got the two bolts, 10mm are holding the front of this engine guard again, so let's get those off. Might as well take your spark protector. We got access because we're going to have to pull this pipe and undo it from the engine and the frame itself. We're going to have to work on getting these springs disconnected and drop our foot brake so that we can get the engine pulled. What else is on here? So, and then 12mm bolts underneath here are what hold on the foot peg in the engine guard area. So we're going to drop the foot peg and guard at this point. Alright, so the two front bolts are going to release, and then you're going to actually be able to drop this out now. So just be gentle so you don't scratch anything up. And you pull your guard out of place. And then you got two more bolts down here. They're going to hold the remaining connection of the foot pegs. Now we're going to reuse this foot peg. I'm going to get some spacers to help it clear the new engine that's a little wider. So you got to drop the pegs down just a little bit to clear the case. And then we'll work on getting these. I can just do the spring release probably in my hand. Here, let's see. Yeah, now that the foot peg's out of the way, it gives you enough clearance to release these without fighting with them. Alright, so let's get the exhaust unbolted. You got a 14mm bolt right here that hooks into the engine upper mount, and then your two 10mm nuts on the head exhaust stud, and then on the back part on the frame, which is in the video, there's I think it's a 14mm acorn nut, and then you can pull the muffler and out of your way. This is 14 acorn, then you got 12 right here, and then the 10mm on the exhaust engine. Alright, so we got the 10mm nuts loosened, final securement on the exhaust. Always keep your hand on it, because once you start loosening things, it's going to tend to slip, and you don't want to, scratch things, your paint or the side cover. So just keep a hand on it while you're working it loose. If you got an H model, you got a clutch cable here, so we're going to just turn this adjustment screw up here out of the way on the cable, turn it clockwise to relieve the tension, and when you're doing that, it's going to drop this arm a little bit so the spring tension isn't on it, and then we should be able to hopefully use our finger and kind of lift it up like that and release this part from the thing. And then it's just a simple pull up and pull your rubber down, so you can slide it through this slot here and get it out of there. And our clutch cable is out. We're going to reuse that cable because the Lifan engine is a front clutch arm just like this Honda OEM. We already released our two little springs here, but I want to get this arm dropped even more, just make it more convenient when we pull the engine and then put the new one in. So the easy way to do this is just undo your brake rod in the back, unloosen your adjustment nut here until it's completely off. Then you got your rod free, and then your arm can drop out of the way for the most part. The next thing is spark plug, boot, which I don't have on here, but get that pulled off so that when you do drop the engine, it's not hooked onto it anymore and holding you up. And then what other thing was I just going to do? Oh, fuel lines. So we're going to get the fuel lines pulled from the carb. There's probably going to be some more residual gas, so make sure you collect that up. And then that's going to be, oh, and then the electrical harness, which is tapped in here. We're going to have to disconnect the stator connector to the main harness, and then everything is going to be free to go ahead and pull your engine bolt, top mount and lower mount down here, and then you're going to be able to get that dropped. You might want to put a blanket or something down here, a cushion, so that it just doesn't come and fall down on the cement if that's where you're working near, or any hard surface. So just put some cushion down to catch this engine, because they weigh about 40, 50 pounds. Left is the stator wire connector to the main harness. So I'm going to pull the top, leave the bottom bolt in. Both these engine bolts, mount bolts here, pull out on the clutch side, so you should be able to put a little weight under the cylinder head and be able to work this mount bolt out. And then when you drop it, it will allow you to get in there to the electrical that's tucked in there. It's really tight when you have the boot and gas lines and everything, but once you get that out, you can get access to this clip and gently pull that out. So the last thing that we have to do is get this lower mount out, and we are going to want to get this kick foot brake out of there. Again, put some pressure under the engine. It's got a lot of weight on this bolt, so actually what I'm going to do is use a punch and gently give it a few taps to help it come in through here. And like I said, some cushion under the engine. I might even put I'm going to put my engine block that I use to rebuild under here to keep some support, and then give a punch and tap out this lower engine mount bolt, because it's pretty hard to get out with all that weight sitting on this bolt here. Alright, engine is out. So that's going to wrap up this second video, just getting the engine out, and I'm just going to make another video that we're going to start adding all the parts and pieces to get the Lifan swap in. I just want to keep these videos like kind of short and concise. But anyways, please subscribe. I'm going to get that one wrapped up. I'm doing this all in the same day, so I'll just have that video uploaded shortly too. Alright, thanks guys.